In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a cone using the Egyptian Revival pattern plate from PotterUSA. So this pattern plate has a cone pattern built into it on the end here. I'm going to start with an annealed piece of 20 gauge sterling silver and roll it through with the plate in my rolling mill. You'll notice that my silver is smaller than my plate. This won't cause any issues as long as I don't over tighten the rolling mill. So I've rolled it through and you can see I got a really nice impression. So my next step is to just cut out the cone pattern with my jeweler's saw. I'm just going to follow the perimeter that the pattern provides and cut out the shape. Next, I'm going to just file the edges, and I'm using a fairly coarse file. This is a number 2 cut. And I'm just going to follow all the edges to smooth everything out. And what's really crucial is making sure that the two edges where the cone is going to come together, these flat sides, are very straight and flat because this is going to be a solder seam. We need to bring those ends together flush, so we need to make sure they're really nice and filed flat because these two sides are going to meet. So next I am going to anneal these pieces so that they're nice and malleable so that I can form the cone for soldering. The metal right now is very stiff from rolling it through the rolling mill, so I'm just annealing so that I can bend it more easily. And now I'm going to pickle and clean. So now I have the silver softened. I'm going to start forming. And what I'm trying to do is I'm not really worried about a perfect cone shape. What I'm worried about is bringing these two edges together, with a really nice clean seam so that I can get this cone soldered. And it's best to make sure you start with the small end first, bringing those two ends together, and then you can bring the larger ends together afterward. So I used some nylon jaw pliers to get this started, and now I'm going to use a nylon mallet to just tap it down and bring those two ends close together. Keep forming this so I can get it soldered. And you can see that I'm working on the bench pin. I'm working over a wood surface just so that I don't mar my metal, flatten out my pattern, or leave any tool marks. So right now you can see these ends are kind of coming together, but they're coming together at a peak. And I want them to come together flush. So I need to keep tapping this down until they come together flush. So it just takes some time to get everything perfect. You might need to stop and anneal in between. You can use round nose pliers. It would be best if you had nylon. I'm using metal ones, so I need to be very careful not to mar my surface or leave any tool marks because this cone has a pattern in it from the pattern plate, and I don't want to mess that up. So my metal is pretty stiff. I went ahead and annealed it off camera, and then I came back and I'm working on tapping it down some more now that the metal has been softened again. Just bringing those ends together. It's getting a lot closer. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. It's ready for me to take over to my soldering station. The ends have come together flat, and everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and flux the seam. Now I'm heating just to boil the water off of the flux. You can see I have the seam here. I'm going to put that face down so that I can actually solder from the interior. And I'm going to do this so that I don't have excess solder on the exterior of the cone. I don't want it to flood my pattern or anything like that. So if I put the solder on the inside, I won't have to worry about cleanup. I won't have to worry about it getting in my pattern, and I can just use the heat to pull the solder through that seam. So right now I'm just placing the solder chips. Now I'm going to turn my torch up a little bit and flow the solder. You can see my little pallions there along that seam on the inside. So just heat really evenly. And once I see the solder flow, I'm going to flip the cone over and then just draw the solder through that seam with the heat. There we go. Okay, so this is out of the pickle. It's nice and clean, and my solder seam looks good. The solder came all the way through. Now I'm ready to form this cone into an actual cone shape. So I'm going to use a bezel block. Basically this has round tapered holes and a tapered punch. This particular block I believe is a 17 degree. They come in different degree angles. You can use any kind of cone-shaped mandrel that you have. It's just easiest in one of these blocks. And so I'm just tapping it very gently to round everything out. So that has made it nice and round now. And I'm just ready for final finishing. So you can see how this could really dress up the ends of a beaded necklace. You could do multi-strands or larger beads, and it would just really finish off those ends.